Welcome back. We now want to take a look at the final leg of the campaigns. Remember, the official campaign period ends on August 6th. That's this coming Saturday. So from today, we're counting about 5 days to the end of the official campaign period. And from what we've seen over the last few days, the kind of rhetoric, the kind of language being used on the campaign trail, it appears everything has gone a notch higher. The kind of exchanges, the kind of challenges, what the deputy president and his running mate are challenging the president to do or not do in his last days as president. And the use of propaganda also in social media, on TV, in the kind of advertising that the campaigns are using has gone a notch higher. Now, we want to take a look at that and to see if at all it will have any impact on the elections. Let's start from the other end this time round with Kipchumba Karori. Is this something that we've always expected, that in the last weeks, the last days of the campaigns, it's going to get heated? And does this heat result in anything constructive or anything positive for the campaigns? The kind of even pronouncements and tweets sent out by very high-profile leaders?
I think at the end of the day, there is a problem here, Fred, in the sense that instead of us reducing this issue into an issue-based kind of politics, if we start heightening the tension, we know where we were in 2007, 2008. I would not like to talk about it, but my plea to one person who can help us and whose what happens after 9th is highly reliant on his aunt is Uhuru Kenyatta. And I would like to talk to him as my president that he must remember that he came to power as he came to power when he was in ICC. He was an ICC indictee. He should not leave power through the same route, because when he brings and when propaganda and rumors are milled around what he says in private meetings, it doesn't augur well with other political competition, because he's not on the ballot. Why he engages in toxic politics is what I don't know. But at the end of the day, supporters of each political camp must know, for example, that it is 1 week to the election. We need now to start reducing the premium and the attachment we have to politicians. We need to start asking ourselves, how will I live if our opponent or the person I did not expect wins? How will I live if my person wins? Because at the end of the day, Fred, even as the leading horses are removing their gauntlets, we need to know that we have a nation after the election. And the people at the steering wheel now are the Kenyans, the people who are going to vote, the 22 million voters. Let them take the lead and deal with the issues. It is them to tell us whether we are going to go to a better future or we are going to have a connection with the status quo.
Yes, this must, we've seen that because we've been subjected to a prolonged campaign period going as long as years or months at least. And we've seen a civil kind of conversation so far up to this point. People talking about what they promise, what issues they want to change. It's a discussion about the economy, agriculture, and issues like that. But the last few days, all of that appears to have been lost. And we're now talking about individuals and what they should or should not do. And in a very militant tone, if I may say that.
Well, it appears that the three most powerful politicians in Kenya, President Kenyatta, William Samoei Ruto, and Raila Odinga, are now running away from issue-based politics. Now they're becoming emotional. Because a close review of the remarks made by President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga and William Samoei Ruto suggests that it's no longer about kitchen table politics. The cost of mortgages in Kenya, public debt, school fees, no. They've abandoned those. Now they are looking at tribal numbers and emotion. And it seems to me they've come to the realization that you could have the most beautiful manifesto in the world. You can discuss your public debt, global warming and everything else. But for some reason, Kenyans have been socialized in a manner that they look at tribal numbers. And maybe that's the reason why these three powerful politicians are now going back to tribal numbers and making Kenyans to be very emotional. Now, if they're not very careful, there's a very high probability that part of Kenya could actually disintegrate and degenerate into chaos because they're very powerful politicians. A number of their supporters are both emotional and irrational. They may not understand exactly what these politicians are talking about, and they could just degenerate into chaos, which is a threat to our national security. Which is why, times above number, people had indicated that President Kenyatta should have done what President Mwai Kibaki did when he set the gold standard that he is not going to participate actively in succession politics, so that he remains as the symbol of national unity. When President Kibaki was leaving office, he may have taken sides, but he did not go to Mount Kenya or Sagana or any state lodge to make his pronouncements. So people felt safe. But right now, it seems that it's President Kenyatta and Mr. Raila Odinga on one side, and Mr. William Ruto on one side. So that one has got there's probability of tension, which is why that in the next few days, they must deliberately reduce the tension and go back to ideas. Even if they want to wipe up emotions, they can do it in a very clever manner without making people feel nervous. Because right now, when you have conversations with a number of business and corporate leaders, diplomats and international journalists, the question they keep on asking, are we going to have a recurrence of violence? Why is President Kenya all of a sudden very furious when he's describing his deputy? Why is the deputy very furious when he's responding to the president? And why is Mr. Raila Odinga very furious? So they must make sure that their pronouncements are aligned with the national and public interest, because nobody wants any lives lost or property destroyed on account of reckless statements by any politician.
Hesbon, and as far as communications is concerned, there is a place for this kind of emotional approach to campaigns vis-a-vis the rational route, because I think for the main campaigns, it is about solidifying their bases, and we've seen other politicians do this because you've already articulated your message. You've been doing that for months, probably years. Right now, it's just ensuring that you solidify your base. There are risks to that as well, but from a communication standpoint, how much do they need to solidify their bases, and hence that route, the emotional approach?
Well, I think where it has reached, communication has two dimensions. There is the functional dimension and the dimension that is alive to the climate, the communication setup. So from the conversations that we've had, especially the way the president has been communicating in private, rattling his deputy, it seems like they understand the communication climate, that once you throw in, some conversations in the public, there is a reaction. But to me, it appears like Kenya Kwanza has this calculated way of doing it, and they're looking at the climate dimension, the climate of their communication setup as a dimension to achieve that functional element. You look at what happened in Nandi and what happened in Mount Kenya region, it does seem like it was a very strategic way of, looking at the climate within which you are communicating, the people you are targeting, and sending a message that will galvanize them strongly. It's the same thing that the deputy president was doing in Nandi, replicated by Rigathi Gachagua. Now, it is unfortunate, that, we live in a world where even if the media wanted to be responsible enough to sift some things out, the media would find itself in a precarious position, because the same words that they used would come through, the peripheral media spaces. But to a large extent, I think there are two things here. One, there's a President Kenyatta who is not on the race. And then number two, there is a deputy president who appears to be, looking at these 2022 elections as the alpha and omega, a must win for him. From where I sit, it is good to win an election, but there's a bigger picture. The way the Kenya Kwanza is responding, first of all, if it doesn't galvanize their supporters to the extent of winning the election, then the second thing they're doing to themselves is that they are ruining any chance of them being held as credible going forward. We've seen this script in the past. We've seen, the last 4 years, how the deputy president has sat back in podiums and his lieutenants have attacked the president with reckless abandon. We allowed that to happen. Now we are reaping the consequences of that it is playing out in the public domain, and it appears like, the quest to get the votes supersedes any other thing. So they would do any other thing, drop names, cast aspersions, and some of them are very rebellious in the way they are cast. But ultimately, I think Kenyans have been in this tradition where we've seen politicians who've been betrayed. And I think that is what put Raila, strongly as a safe pair of hands, In 2002, when he joined KANU, I think the expectation was he was going to be rewarded. It never happened. He never lost his cool in public and attacked President Moi. Never did that. Then in 2007, after the Grand Coalition government was formed, as the Prime Minister, what he expected was at least, a level playing ground. And depending on where you sit, we know Kibaki had a preferred candidate. And to a large extent, even the Kibaki Tosha declaration by Raila was not reciprocated in 2013. He never lost his cool in public. And I think that is what has put him strongly as a presidential candidate today. What is happening to the deputy president is something that can kill any opportunity, any chance of him becoming the president of this country, not in 2022, but even in future.
Okay.
To build the political capital that you've built as the deputy president requires that it reaches a point where now you need to stop looking for the votes ferociously.
Okay.
You need to elevate yourself to a statesman, to a presidential candidate, to someone who can assume that office. And I think in the last 1 week, he has not demonstrated.
But Rita, is it really accidental? Is it really that they're losing their cool, or is this a calculated move, that this is the kind of approach that we will take in the last days of the campaigns for a certain result, anticipated result, that we will get emotional, we will get personal, and they're not doing it by default, but rather by design?
Thank you, Fred. It's just, I'm actually laughing and I'm very overwhelmed by Hezbon's response, because calling Raila, who organized the 1982 coup, as cool and calm and collected is one of the most ridiculous things I have heard on national television. Secondly, saying that a presidential aspirant should be more presidential than a sitting president who is using stronger and more aggressive words is also ridiculous, Hezbon. Let's be fair in what we require or what we demand of our presidential candidate.
Say it is ridiculous.
But yes, it is ridiculous, because if there's a sitting president who's been there for 10 years,
and you can see how this conversation is
and he's behaving if we want to say the same way as a presidential aspirant, then that is the standard for being presidential. And you've mentioned this twice, and twice I have wondered, what is your reference for how to behave properly presidential? Because it seems like a very subjective thing that is only in your head. But then, to your question, of course, these are the last days. Every politician is at the stage of get out the votes. In this country, the political reality is that we need to mobilize our voters to the ballot. And this is how we do it, as Dismas says, rallying the emotions, rallying the tribal base. Every politician's base is somehow tribal. Of course, like Hezbon says, when Ruto goes to Mount Kenya or Rigathi, they have to find a way of energizing that base. And sometimes the style or the words they choose may sound very off to us. What really gets me riled up as a Kenyan is what Kipchumba said. These two gentlemen, the outgoing president who is behaving as if he's not outgoing, and William Ruto, who's the current deputy president, we have the benefit of them being ICC indictees because of similar behavior, similar tones, similar aggression. But it seems that if we call it the folly of their youth, 10 years later, they've not shed it off. They're still behaving as if somehow they are immune to the consequences of what they're saying. It is still very disturbing to some of us that people like Sang, who are on a media station, had to answer to some of the things they did. But the people who mobilized them and pushed them to do these type of things are free. So we have to be conscious that, yes, this time round, if we get to the place that you're trying to take us, we will hold you accountable.
But is it necessarily that that is a destination they're looking for, or they want a different kind of result, probably?
They want a different kind of result. but they are not in control of what their supporters will do to help them achieve it. When we're having the post-election violence, I can tell you for free, Raila or Ruto or Uhuru are not on the streets. But it is how you speak to your base. It is how you talk in private and in public, because the President Uhuru seems to be doing a lot of these things somehow in secret and hoping it doesn't get out. For what interest? Because he's not even a presidential candidate. In fact, I think of these three, he's the most upsetting. Okay. He needs to step aside. So what I'm saying is they might be using this word, and they're not fools. These are some of the smartest people. They know the consequences of what they're doing, and they need to put a stop to it. It is embarrassing, and it is a shame that they still want to take us back to where we were.
Now, to be a presidential candidate in Kenya, a serious one, who has a probability of winning, you must be an intelligent politician. So all the presidential candidates are intelligent politicians, and everything they do, there's no accident at all. There's no accident in politics. Whatever statements are coming out of their mouths are well calculated. They've got a certain agenda to achieve. And as Esgon has indicated, that the way Kenya Kwanza has been responding. So it's a confirmation that Kenya Kwanza has been provoked by another party to respond in a particular manner. And if you're going to place the burden where it belongs, it's all these three powerful politicians. They must abandon, or they must abstain from toxic politics. They must abandon any intervention which would be a threat to our national security. These are the gentlemen who have presided over the economy for the last 10 years. The poverty rate has gone to 64%. There's food insecurity, there's fertilizer insecurity, all these insecurities we are facing. Kenyans, again, do not want to start having fears or phobias that what is going to happen on the 9th when I cast my ballot. The three leaders must give Kenyans peace of mind. You know, on the worst case scenario, you've mismanaged the economy, we can't afford unga, we can't afford ugali, but on the worst case scenario, give Kenyans peace of mind as they try to manage those variables. But in summary, in marketing, in political communications, there's this concept of the pain and pleasure concept. This is exactly what these candidates are deploying. Because one party is saying that if Raila Odinga becomes a president, you are going to bleed. You're not trying to inflict some fear, some pain. And the converse is the case. But these people must know that while their properties and lives are going to be secure, the common man, Mura, Wanjiro, and Nafula, are not in that position. It's unacceptable for them to create tension. And you know, for a fella in Musocho who doesn't join the dots properly, to degenerate into chaos.
Okay, Kipchumba Karori, the other thing that can be talked about 5 days to the end of the official campaign period is the use of propaganda, especially on social media. And I know you've criticized the media a lot, but when it comes to the use of propaganda, there's nothing much that the media can do. Media owners, immediately you own a social media page, you can transmit anything you want. What do you have to say about that?
I think let me just give a rejoinder, then I answer your question. Why the temper and why the gloves are off is, and the question somebody will ask is, why is Uhuru Kenyatta more determined this time more than when he was a presidential candidate? I think the president is getting desperate. What he had hoped to have achieved by now is not working, and that's why you see him when he's speaking, he's frothing from the mouth, he's doing all that, and I think that is not being presidential. I don't know how my friend Esgon Owila sees presidential when a president doesn't act in that manner. And what the message that must be sent to the president is that don't do something that will make this country cease being an enterprise as it has been. And back to your question of propaganda, why propaganda now? You have to realize that we are on the tail end of getting out the vote. Getting out the vote is what you look at the end of the day is the vote, not how it is gotten out. Whether you will do all manner of things, I have seen so many gory things happen now, but it is because also the foundation of our politics is founded on very shaky grounds. We do not discuss principles. We do not subject our candidates to discuss the hard things. So what remains is that nature abhors a vacuum. So what remains in the air is now you have to play propaganda here. And that's why even when you hear our politicians, they say some of the very useless things on stages, but it is what our political orientation is. So at the end of the day, you will expect to see heightened propaganda in the coming week. You will see a lot of things. Actually, the coming week is the week of the worst things to happen, because all the strategies in the all the arsenals in these camps will be deployed, and the people will be going for nothing but the last vote. So I think what we must do now is to investigate the agencies, DCI, police, NCIC, to be on the watch out and to make sure that even as the political propaganda and satire is being played, it should not touch on national security, because as Kenyans, casting a vote is one thing. The only person who benefits from our vote is the politician, because most of these people, you vote for him today, it disappears for 5 years. So at the end of the day, it is us who have a country. And most of these politicians also have diplomatic passports. If anything was to go wrong, they will just disappear within just one flight. And for us, we will be here to deal with the mess. So I think Kenyans must also ask themselves why some of these information are coming out now. Okay. Like the other day, I saw the Secretary General of Jubilee, or was it the Ovazimio, saying some very mendacious things.
We don't have to repeat those, yeah? Because
yes, we need to ask ourselves, Fred, where have these people been?
Okay. Hezbollah propaganda, there is a place of that for that in campaigns. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I think I agree. And I think the digital platform has made it a lot more pronounced and more devastating in terms of effect, for the simple reason that right now it's easy to spew propaganda from all quarters and remain anonymous. We know what happened in 2017. We've seen an increase in the use of bots on Twitter until Twitter cracked down. And it's become so pervasive in our society, because everyone has a gadget that is mass mediated, so they can get mass mediated communication on their phones. And we get bombarded with information that we think are coming from credible sources, but we can't see those credible sources. And it's pretty much dangerous, because it's whipping emotions, and it's whipping emotions among a public that is not suspicious of what can happen. But let me just respond to what Rita has said. One, I think we are looking at candidates who are going to take over the reins of this country after the elections. So I don't think it's even important, to talk about President Uhuru Kenyatta, who has served his term. We are looking at Raila Odinga and the deputy president. Those are the two. One of them is going to become the president. If we focus on how presidential they are going to be, it will help us. Now, the other things, that question of votes, the strategy that is used to get votes, if riles another party, that is their problem. We are coming from a background where you can explain the meltdown that we are seeing. Total meltdown. People are losing their cool. Why? Any mischief that they expected to benefit from, IBC, is now gone. I mean, we are increasingly seeing that we are going to have an election without any mischief. And if there are guys who thought they would ride on anything, the Venezuelan guys and all that, because they were defending that, that's gone. Then number two, there was this thinking that President Uhuru Kenyatta was playing Raila Odinga, that at some point he was going to bolt out. It's not happening.
Okay.
And they're seeing a situation where their dreams, the mirage that they had is coming down crashing. Then number three, there was this thinking that Raila Odinga can't climb Mount Kenya. First of all, he didn't even need anyone to take him to Mount Kenya. He just needed access. Now, the combination of Martha and Raila Odinga is riling these fellows. It's the reason why Rita is saying that she is riled here. I mean, I would be afraid the day Rita agrees with me. Yeah, I would be so much afraid. Okay. The day Rita would be happy with my comment, there would be a problem on the other side.
Okay,
but as it is right now, this meltdown is occasioned by a team that is seeing the empire that they built coming down crashing. And the victory that they were seeing is gone.
On that note, thank you, husband. On that note, we take another break. When we come back, we get to listen to views from our viewers. That on Inside Politics after this break.